Okay, let's get right into it. We're in the middle of this huge shift in how countries fight for power. And I mean, forget everything you think you know about traditional war. The biggest, most intense battles today, they're not happening on some field. They're being fought in bank transfers, in legal documents, and in the fine print of shipping contracts. You see, the most powerful weapons in the world today, they aren't missiles. They're rules. Yeah, you heard that right. Economic rules, legal rules, these are the new tools of power. And they can cripple an entire economy, completely isolate a nation, and redraw the map of global influence, all without firing a single shot. So that begs the real question, right? Who is writing these insanely powerful rules? And maybe more importantly, what happens when you decide to break them? The answer, well, it pulls back the curtain on this high-stakes global game of chess, a game of strategy, of evasion, and of consequences that, believe it or not, ends up affecting every single one of us. All right, so to really get what's going on, we have to understand the weapons. Let's decode the arsenal and look at the actual tools being used to fight this new kind of economic war. So the main weapon, the big one, is economic sanctions. The core idea is actually pretty simple. One government slaps penalties on another country to try and make them change what they're doing. And this can be anything, really, from freezing all their money to just straight up banning trade. But, and this is a huge but, this is where it gets incredibly powerful and honestly super controversial. We're talking about secondary sanctions. Look, it's not just about targeting the bad guy anymore. These sanctions target anyone, anywhere in the world who dares to do business with them. So picture this. A bank in, say, Europe, finances a deal with a sanctioned country. Boom. Suddenly, that European bank could be completely locked out of the entire U.S. financial system. And that right there is the new reality. Being neutral, yeah, that's not really a safe bet anymore. If you're an international business, a bank, a shipping company, it doesn't matter. You can get caught right in the middle of the crossfire and be forced to pick a side. The ripple effects from this are just massive. Of course, what happens when one side builds a superweapon? The other side immediately starts working on how to beat it. And that brings us to the great sanctions evasion game. It's this global game of cat and mouse, with enforcers trying to plug the holes and a whole lot of people trying to slip right through the cracks. Now, researchers have actually broken this down into 5 key moves. Think of it like a playbook. First, you can just ignore the rules, super risky, but it's an option. Second, you can try to avoid them, find some clever legal loophole. Third, you can hide what you're doing. Fourth, you can actively deceive the authorities. Or fifth, you can just cope. Basically, find ways to work around the rules without technically breaking them. And believe me, this isn't just some academic theory. Let's take that hide strategy. A classic real-world example, North Korea. They are masters at using these incredibly complex webs of shell companies. The whole point is to create a financial maze so confusing, so dense, that tracing where the money is actually coming from becomes next to impossible. And the tactics, man, they are always evolving. It's a constant arms race. So how do you move oil you're not supposed to be selling? Easy. You do ship-to-ship transfers out in the middle of the ocean, probably in the dead of night. How do you get around an arms embargo? You find these sketchy, secret trade routes. And how do you move money without anyone noticing? Well, more and more people are turning to crypto to take advantage of all the regulatory gaps out there. So all this pressure, this constant back and forth of sanctions and evasion, it's not just a tactical game, it's bigger than that. It's having huge strategic consequences. We're talking about a fundamental reshuffling of the entire global economic and political deck. Which leads to this really critical question. If the rules of the game are basically being written and enforced by just one side, what does everyone else do? Do you just play along? Or do you try to build a whole new game with a different set of rules? For decades, the playbook was super simple. The US dollar was king, period. But now we're seeing a massive countermove. Countries in the BRICS group, that's Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, they are actively looking for ways to get around the dollar. And a major strategy, as you see here, is to just trade with each other using their own currencies. It's a whole movement called de-dollarization. And here's the kicker. This isn't just about money. It's pure geopolitics. By creating these alternate financial systems, these countries are also building new alliances. They're strengthening their relationships with other nations that feel kind of trapped by the current system. It's like they're building a whole parallel economic highway to make Western sanctions less painful. And this is where things get really wild with some seriously ironic, unintended consequences. Take Russia, for example. The heavy sanctions on them have actually pushed them into a much closer relationship with, wait for it, North Korea. So not only do these new friendships make the original sanctions less effective, they can create totally new geopolitical cracks in the world, making everything way more complicated and maybe even more dangerous. So, where is this all going? Let's peek into the future, at the outlook for 2025. Because if you think the rulebook is complicated now, just you wait. It's about to get a whole lot thicker. Yeah, we're looking at some analysis from the legal experts at Steptoe, and they've got a pretty clear picture of what's coming. And the trend? It's impossible to miss. These economic weapons are just getting sharper, more sophisticated, and way more common. Okay, so here's what to watch for in 2025. First, you're going to see a much more aggressive European Union, using its own tools to defend its trade interests. Second, there's this new foreign subsidies regulation, which is basically designed to stop countries from cheating the market. And third, and this one is a game changer, you've got things like the CSDDD. This is basically going to force big companies to be the police for their own supply chains, making sure there are no human rights or environmental problems. See? The rule writers are getting very creative. And all of this leaves us with one final, really big question to chew on. As these economic weapons get sharper and smarter, are we actually building a safer, more orderly world that runs on rules? Or are we just drawing new, more confusing battle lines for the next generation of global conflict? That's the real question, isn't it? Something to think about.